Hello everyone and welcome to The Talk, a bi-weekly but somewhat a whenever I feel like it show that comes on every now and again. It's a show where I stick my face directly in front of the camera and talk about gaming subjects or gaming culture or something related to games in some sort of way. This week is slightly different because I didn't really have anything to talk about. I had a couple of subjects I wanted to cover a few weeks ago, but I think they're a bit dead and buried. So I wanted to change up slightly. I wanted to talk about me. I may have covered this in the past, probably on a podcast somewhere, but it wasn't in detail, let's put it that way. I wanted to talk about my favorite game of all time, because some of you know, and some of you don't know what my favorite game of all time is, so you may learn something new here. Besides the fact that, gosh, doesn't Dan have a big head? I was going to do a drum roll and introduce the game that is my favorite game of all time, but it's probably already on the title. It's Metal Gear Solid 1 on PS1. Here's some footage. I suck at YouTube, honestly. Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, not the remake on the GameCube, whatever system that came out in. Not the Metal Gear game that came out in the 80s that was technically Hideo Kojima's first game, or Metal Gear 2. Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PS1. My favorite game of all time. It was probably most people's first game that was super serious and super confusing at the same time, but it dealt with a lot of sort of real world issues, especially politics wise. I played this game when I was about 10, 11 years old, I'm gonna say. It was a long time ago. Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PS1 was the first introduction we had to Solid Snake. I'm not gonna go into all the details of Metal Gear Solid. That's probably gonna be somewhere down the line in a future video if I can be bothered to make that, because oh my god, that's gonna take me a long time. But this is the first Metal Gear game I played, and it was, to sum it up in briefly, it was the most damaging game I ever played as a child. That's been a bit too harsh on it, but that's the reason I like it, because it was one of those games that when I played it and when I finished it, I didn't know where to go next with video games, and I've never really had that with a video game except for Metal Gear Solid 1. Obviously the game's graphics now don't look as good as they are, but back then it was amazing. It was amazing to see these really just cool levels and these characters and these bosses. Yes, Snake looks like a weird, I don't know, cube man with no eyes and no face, but at the time you didn't really think about that when you're a kid. By the way, I am gonna go into spoiler territory, so if you haven't played Metal Gear Solid 1, how have you not played Metal Gear Solid 1? Seriously, come on. So Metal Gear Solid 1 is the first kind of mature game I ever played, like proper, really mature game that I ever played, and I think it was a 15s plus, and it was great because I looked at this, I saw a trailer for it, and I immediately went, this looks really cool. I never played anything like this. Like previous games I played was like Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider I guess I played, but nothing was really gonna mentally prepare me for Metal Gear Solid 1, which is probably why it's one of the greatest games of all time, and it started off this amazing series which I'm a massive fan of. One of the most memorable kind of scenes for me in Metal Gear Solid 1, besides from the opening where you had the doo 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 doo, I think that's how it goes, I don't know, and Snake coming out of the water in his swim gear, floating up, and then getting on the codec and saying,
"This is Snake. Colonel, can you hear me? Loud and clear."
It's just one of those things when you play it for the first time, especially as a kid, you don't realize how like iconic that is, that scene of him coming out of the water and then getting on the codec and all that kind of thing, until you're 25 years old and you realize that's like, you'll remember that scene for the rest of your life. I'd never played a game that there was kind of like a person dying. Yes, I played like games where you played with cartoon characters and all that kind of thing. I really shouldn't have played Metal Gear Solid. I was way too young to play it. It kind of explains a lot of things now. I f***ed up my head. But seeing the DARPA chief die from a heart attack for the first time and actually see like a real human being, well, not a real human being, but you know what I mean, a character that is a human being suffer from dying like in front of you, and there's nothing you can do. It was just one of those moments that's like made you really like scared as a kid. Obviously the scene everyone remembers is, for majority of people, and it's probably one of the most iconic scenes in the Metal Gear Solid series, is the Psycho Mantis boss fight, where Psycho Mantis is able to read your memory card, and that blew my mind. I never experienced kind of fourth wall breaking things in games, and it scared the living out of me. I didn't understand how the game was reading the games I've played, you know, in the past or were stuck on my memory card, and it honestly blew my mind, and at the same time I felt incredibly scared. That Psycho Mantis boss fight for me it still is one of the greatest boss fights of all time. I think it may be the best boss fight of all time, I would say. Not in terms of how you defeat him, but the way around it is just so, it was, at the time, it was so clever, and no one really did that before, except for Eternal Darkness, but that came out in the GameCube, so that was a couple of years later. But to have a boss fight where it was all fourth wall breaking, especially when the way you defeated it, Psycho Mantis, was to plug your controller from controller point 1 into controller point 2. Like, you had to beat a boss by physically moving yourself. That's insane. That was absolutely insane and blew my mind. I never played games that had this. This was the thing, is Metal Gear Solid had this emotional roller coaster of just non-stop, just kept going on and surprised me every time. And I didn't know what to think of it, and I felt, I just remember playing this game and remember feeling just these weird emotions of what is going on. This is like absolutely incredible, and at the same time I'm in awe and I'm in shock.
Exists to mindlessly pass on that DNA. We're designed that way, and that's why there is war. But you are different.
One of the most like somber moments, and again, it's one of them. It's the first kind of emotional moment I've ever had in a video game, and Metal Gear Solid had so many of these things for me, especially because I played it when I was so young. It was the first kind of everything for me. It was the first kind of mature game I played. It was the first game that broke the fourth wall for me. It was the first game that involved politics and like nuclear war and all that kind of thing. And then there was the Sniper Wolf death scene that broke me.
I am a sniper. Waiting is my job. Never moving a muscle. Concentrating.
It was the first time I think I cried in a video game. I never cry. I'd never cry. Not even at movies when I was young. I never cried. But the Sniper Wolf death scene really broke me. I remember playing this, as much as I loved this game while I was playing it, and I was so excited to see what was next. I would stay up all manner of hours trying to play this game because I wanted to see what was next. It was a game I shouldn't have played when I was young because I wasn't ready for it at all. I just was not ready for it. Having said that, I don't think many people were ready for what that game kind of brought to the table.
Hunted like dogs, day after day. Driven from our ragged shelters.
I think the reason why it's my favourite game of all time, and still is, and I don't think anything is ever going to change that. Obviously, you can say it's nostalgic, and I still love that game, but there's reasons behind it. It had my kind of first, as I explained, everything about it. It was my first adult game I played. It was the first real emotional roller coaster of a game I played. It was the first game that dealt with kind of real world things I didn't know about as a kid, but I learned a lot from this game in terms of how up the world can be. It was still dealing with issues like nuclear war. That was a real world thing that I didn't know about, and this game introduced me to it. It had game mechanics that I never ever seen before in a game. like the Psycho Mantis fight, and it just had amazing fights and amazing scenes that I remember still to this day. Oh god, this game is brilliant, isn't it? The interrogation scene as well, which is again something that's super important in that game. I didn't realize how important it was until I was much older. But the ending I got was I didn't save Meryl. And the reason for that was in the interrogation scene, you can give the bad guys, or Ocelot, the details of where Meryl is by giving up. Ocelot said there are no continues after this. If you die, you die, and there are no continues. And I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. And as soon as I saw that life draining down, getting closer as I kept pressing O to try to regen my health, and it got to the last bit, I pressed the button to give up. I felt like that didn't have much of a significance when I was younger. I was like, oh, maybe that's meant to happen, because I was so used to that, you know, that kind of linear kind of thing. And then I realized, not till much later after I completed Metal Gear Solid, that there are two endings, where you save Meryl or where you don't save Meryl. Got to Meryl and she was dead. And again, it just added to the breaking of my fragile little heart, this game, because it was so emotionally like charged, because it made you care about characters, and I never had that in a video game before. It was just something completely mind-blowingly different, and I think because of that game, I'm not saying that this game opened up the world to bigger stories and characters that seemed interesting and characters you care about and emotionally driven stories, but for me it was that gateway into that there's a different type of game that you may like. To be honest, those kind of games have been stuck with me since I was a little boy playing Metal Gear Solid until I'm 25. Metal Gear Solid 1 is the greatest game of all time, in my opinion, and I just have so many good things to say about it that I could be here forever, which I have. I've been here for 37 minutes explaining Metal Gear Solid 1. Hell, I thought I was only going to do this for 15. I'm going to be editing this forever. If you did like the video, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below saying what's your favorite game of all time, because I really would like to know, and I do reply to all comments left, so let me know what's your favorite one of all time. Is it Metal Gear Solid 1? Is it something else? Is it something from the PS1 era? Is it a Nintendo 64 game? Let me know. I'll reply to all comments. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time on The Talk.